the dangers of hedonism. I want to dive into the kind of interesting reasons why we should probably avoid living lives that are solely focused on pleasure and gratification, especially instant gratification. Now, there's a lot of people in the world that might think, what's the big fucking deal? What's the big deal? Why is it so wrong to want to pursue pleasure and pursue enjoyment of life and feel good and be happy? Well, the fact of the matter is, not all things that feel good are in the same category of feeling good. There's a giant difference between the pleasure that is synthetically achieved, and it's almost like shortcut pleasure, such as drugs, sugar, and pornography. Big difference between that category of feeling good and the category of feeling good that is on a much deeper level, which is usually derived from things like family, real love, having skills that you've built for years and years and years that have compounded, that make you feel deeply good after you're practicing them because those skills have compounded. Things like art, and this is also partly part of your skill that's compounded, because if you're good at your art, it's something you practice for a long time. So the really important thing to remember is that being happy and feeling good, generally speaking, is not always the same. It's not always the same thing. There are two categories, essentially, the way I see it. There is the cheap pleasure, and then there is the high quality pleasure. The thing about the high quality pleasure is that the only way to get it is through pain. My philosophy on life is that if we are trying to actually live a life that is successful and a life that is gratifying on a real deep and wholesome and actual legitimate level that lasts, we actually have to seek out pain and responsibility and struggle in the direction that our soul tells us to go in order for us to really feel this and in order for us to really achieve this level of satisfaction and gratification. The alternative is chasing your tail around. It's like the snake eating its own tail, and it never stops, and it's just this voracious, insatiable hunger that never is satiated because it's never really feeding on actual nourishing content. So when you're constantly seeking things like casual sex, if you're constantly consuming drugs, if you're constantly relying on cheap forms of entertainment, if you're constantly just getting distracted by things on a daily basis, these are things that are pleasurable, but they're not valuable. And so the reason that you constantly want those things, and the reason that those things, despite you achieving them constantly, don't make you feel better, the reason is that they're not really nourishing. That is the thing to realize, that when we're talking about the dangers of hedonism, people get addicted to pleasure. People get addicted to extreme forms of pleasure, but extreme forms of pleasure, like, for example, hard drugs, pornography, sex, like casual sex, or like maybe weird versions of sex, like fetishes and all this stuff. So, and the reason is, it's like those things are bound to not satisfy you, and the reason that it's dangerous is that you're going to end up in this limbo of always wanting more and more and more and more and more, and you'll never be satisfied. And in some cases, you'll want to just ramp up the quantity to get the fix like you got before, but because you're building tolerance and stuff to certain gradients and certain capacities of pleasure, it just gets out of hand and spirals out of control. And sometimes people reach that like peak and that limit of their sort of life, and they spiral out of control. And that is the real danger of it. But really, the real danger of it is you're risking your ability to actually really commit to something and some pursuit and some situation that could bring you long-lasting happiness and long-lasting gratification. And again, true happiness and true satisfaction in life, from the way I see it and from the way I've realized and learned, is that it actually ironically comes through pain. Like, you have to embrace the fact that discomfort and pain and even trauma to a certain degree is what paves the way for real, like, lasting satisfaction in a weird kind of twisted way. It's funny, like, to me, I can actually pinpoint the points in my life when I started to, like, level up to a point of feeling so much better about my life and myself, and it was really following certain critical points of pain and trauma, because I had to learn about myself. I had to learn about the errors of my ways and then figure out how to implement, like, better policies. I had to lose people in my life and feel the sting of people abandoning me so that I could be forced to learn how to, like, love myself despite being rejected in the worst ways possible. And the result of that was that I could sit with myself and I could be with myself, and most of all, I could respect myself, because if you only have yourself and you have to rely on yourself, then you learn to greatly respect yourself for surviving these scenarios, which I did. And only through those painful trials was I able to come out and get to a point where I feel, like, good on a daily basis, and I have a purpose, and I do the things on a daily basis that I know will get me to a level that is more sustainable and get me to a mode of operation that's more sustainable, because again, I'm continuing to move towards the pain. I'm moving towards the struggle as opposed to moving directly towards the hedonism, the fun, the drugs, the alcohol, the sex, the women, the sugar, so to speak. Now, a quick disclaimer. Do I think it's wrong to indulge in that stuff ever? I don't think it is. I think that to live a life like a monk in the woods, or like some religious fanatic who's, pure monk mode, no fap, 100-day streak, kind of weird, to be honest. Kind of strange. I think we do need releases in life. I think we do really need, like, points and periods where we, like, just get drunk with our friends and drink, and, like, we have silly fun times together. But too much of that, again, and you're in trouble. That is the main point to keep in mind here, is to understand that, like, okay, if your point of living is just pleasure, you don't understand life. You don't understand that the real grind and the real, juice of life, the real, essence of life is moving towards the pain, because it's all about discovering the things that you're not good at and the blind spots that we're naturally operating on, and discovering that is innately uncomfortable. But discovering that is also the only solution to our existential pain, because it's like if we lack these understandings of ourselves, then we're suffering by default, because we don't know the solution, we don't know the source of the pain. And so that is largely in part why, becoming more conscious and becoming more competent and moving towards pain and moving towards discomfort consistently is literally the only solution and the only way to accomplish more sustainable long-term pleasure. And that is not hedonism. That is a different thing completely. That's more like anti-fragility. So if you want to be happy in life, you don't want to chase hedonism. You don't want to pursue hedonism. You want to pursue strength. You want to pursue anti-fragility. You want to become the type of person who could just get thrown into any situation and figure it out yourself and survive and become stronger in the end. Otherwise, you're fragile, you're addicted, you're like a child that just is, like, dying for the next hit of whatever that is. So, that's all for now. Peace.